Old Grayson put the ball into play. Old describes him well, even if it doesn't go far enough. The old man was older than the dirt, much of which seemed to be stuck to him, and his house. Eventually, social services knocked on his door, and the poor fellow was taken to a nursing home. A couple of bussy women protested against this willful act, saying that the old man would die far from his beloved home. Ha! You could have fooled me. The stupid old fool couldn't even recognize which house was his when he returned from the next street. His grandson petitioned the court to become his guardian, and the court granted him rights without any problems. A worthy young man, his grandson. He put the old house up for sale and opened a trust account to pay for the old man's care in a nursing home. He also got a decent amount for the land because it was large enough to build several townhouses after the old building was demolished. I saw what this place was like inside, and if I were a grandson, I would use a match to level this place. I still shudder to think about what it was like to live there. However, when the old house was gone, builders came and 4 very nice apartments were built and rented out. They sold out quite quickly, as there was a shortage of rental properties in our area. The apartment closest to me was rented by Sonia and Brandon, a young couple who had just recently gotten married. Brandon was about 25 and an ordinary man. He worked for one of the big banks, but I don't think his job had anything to do with the financial side. As far as I understand, he was a programmer. Sonia was several years younger than Brandon. I thought she was probably in her 20s, but I wasn't about to swear to it. I'm not exactly an expert at determining a woman's age. This is a game for idiots. Get it right, and they will feel insulted. Get high when they want you low, or get low when they want you high. Doesn't matter. They feel insulted. If I were asked to describe Sonia, I would do it with 2 simple gestures. Raise my cupped palms high on the sides of her head to show the abundance of blonde hair she had, and then hold my cupped palms a good 6 inches from my chest to show the abundance of her mammary gland development. If she has a child, he will definitely not go hungry. Mind you, the rest of her figure wasn't bad either. Her thin waist, beautifully widening hips, graceful arms and legs, and the sway of her hips as she walked made men drool and watch her. Oh, and one more thing. I did get the impression that Sonia wasn't the brightest spark around. I'm not saying she was stupid. I think she's more lazy in that she doesn't think things through. It was probably effective when she put in the effort, but she would have to admit that the effort was worth it. I ran into Sonia several times while walking down the street. She was a cheerful and friendly young woman who tended to flirt a little. Not that I mind. It always helps your ego to be stroked by a pretty young lady. With Thanksgiving approaching, many homes were having barbecues in their backyards. For those of us who lived at court, it was a fairly free and relaxed activity. If you wanted to crash one of them, you would go straight ahead and crash, and no one would mind. The tenants of the 4 new apartments were fully consistent with this philosophy. Seeing that I liked barbecues, I started checking out most of them. Why not? Nice company and free food. I always drank several bottles, although I am not a big drinker myself. I learned long ago that a man with several bottles is always welcome. I've run into Sonia and Brandon at several of these events. Brandon would go because he felt it was his duty to get to know his neighbors, and Sonia would go because she was just naturally outgoing. She also took the time to flirt with me when we finally met. It was a drink and then a meeting with Sonia that gave me a brilliant idea. It must have been the drink, because without it, I wouldn't have thought of it. I've been known to get the urge from time to time when I've been flirting with a pretty girl, and Sonia certainly came up with the pretty part. She was flirting a lot, and we both knew she didn't mean anything by it, but like I said, I had a drink. Sonia was wearing a short, loose skirt, which, when she turned sharply, flew up so much that her panties became visible. Just a casual glance, but it's enough to tempt me to sin. I happened to notice that from where we were standing, the rest of the party couldn't see us too well. Oh, they could see us clearly enough to know who we were, but from the waist down, the bushes obscured their view. I took advantage of this unhealthy advantage. "Hey, Sonia," I said, lifting up her skirt and letting my hand touch hers. "Why don't you come see me tomorrow after Brandon leaves for work? I want to show you something." I took my hand out from under her skirt, grabbed her hand, and pressed it against the bulge in my pants. Her face turned bright red, and she started mumbling, not knowing what to say. She actually pulled her hand away from my groin quite deftly, but she was definitely given a good idea of what was there. I laughed at her confused muttering, put my hand under her skirt again, and touched her again. I assure you there is nothing wrong with my touch. She quickly backed away from me and gave me an angry look. She also took a couple of deep breaths to calm herself down. She then snorted and walked away from me, not wanting to flirt with me anymore. "See you tomorrow," I said quietly as she left. She avoided me for the rest of the evening, not that I was too surprised. Finally, I returned home, went to bed and enjoyed a good night's sleep, and woke up refreshed in the morning. I had just finished breakfast and was sitting thinking about what I should do that day when there was a knock at the back door. I would open the front door myself. The back door means someone I knew. "Open!" I shouted. "Come in." I was stunned when Sonia entered. My guess was that she should have been at home, hiding under the bed in case I looked in rather than coming in through the back door. She was wearing a white t-shirt with no bra. I could tell for sure because I could see the dark circles highlighting her breasts, and my eyes were drawn to the small bulges in the material. She was also wearing another one of those loose floppy skirts, and I think this one was even shorter than the one she was wearing last night. Oh yes, she also had this very slight blush. My first thought was, what the fuck is she doing here? Then I added, dressed like this. My second thought hit me with a blinding flash of the obvious. She accepted my proposal from the previous evening. I could practically smell her arousal. What the hell was I supposed to do now? A simple question, easy to ask, and even easier to answer. If she was wondering if I would try to have sex with her, then it was only fair to show her that I would. I stood up and moved closer to her. Her t-shirt wasn't tucked into her skirt, so I just grabbed it and lifted it up. "Let's get rid of this," I said, picking her up. Talk about determined resistance? She didn't have one. She simply raised her arms and let me immediately pull off her t-shirt, standing topless with her chest heaving with her heavy breathing. I threw off her t-shirt and my hands grabbed her breasts. She stood there letting it happen, her face flushed, breathing heavily, her mouth slightly open. I mentally shrugged, lowered my hands to her skirt and pulled it down along with her panties, not bothering to undo any of the clasps. It worked out anyway. I stood back for a moment looking at her and enjoying what I could see, letting her see me watching and enjoying myself. I approached her again and held her close to me. There was no sound from her. Her blush and breathing may have quickened a little, but that was the only reaction I could see. I stepped back again, unbuttoning my pants. I pulled them and my panties down and was ready for action. I pulled her close to me again. This time she actually made a sound, but I'll be damned if I could tell what it meant. I had a feeling that if I tried to get her into bed, she would be disappointed. Being dragged into bed simply didn't fit into her idea of sex. So I just grabbed her and threw her onto the kitchen floor, relieved to see what was there. Purely. I knew at first glance that she was ready and waiting for me. She raised her head and watched as I approached her. I did not hesitate to take her. I finally got a noticeable reaction. She screamed, but not from fear or pain or protest. Would you believe that damn woman screamed because she felt so good? I paused to let her climax, but as soon as she began to calm down, I began my performance again. I was a rude, uncouth animal. I told her how good I felt, how much I liked having sex with her. She simply enjoyed the rudeness and discourteous treatment. When I decided it was the right time to unwind, I went all in. I didn't care whether Sonia was ready or not. She wanted some rough sex, and she damn well might as well just take what she got. Besides, she had already had one discharge. I got to work and gave it my all, climaxing smoothly and quickly. Sonia must have been living right because she too reached her second release, letting out a terrible scream again. Sonia then hurriedly got dressed and headed to the back door. I stopped her before she walked through the door. "Sonia," I called, "if you come back here this afternoon, I'll strip you, spank you, and then we'll have sex again. The spanking can continue as long as I love you." She looked over her shoulder at me, her face turned red.